Okay, guys, trying again. I'm sorry for the low quality video. There's something going on with my webcam, so we've got to just use the one here on the computer, and it's a little foggy. But it's going to give us an opportunity to talk about the legal aspect of divorce. So thank you for joining me. I'm sorry about the tech troubles. What we're going to do here today is we're going to talk about two, and I'm actually going to cover three big mistakes that I see a lot of men making legally that have a big impact on their financial future and their custody futures. So we're going to talk about those mistakes, and then there's a strategy that you can focus on that can make a huge difference in those legal outcomes. So I want to welcome you guys to the call. Feel free to drop me a note in the chat, say hi, let me know where you're listening from. If you've got any questions as we go, or you want to share any of your experience, you can just enter that in the chat, and we can address any particular issues or questions or comments that come up for you. So the thing about the legal side of divorce, I think that most men and most lawyers pride themselves on being rational and logical and making good decisions, right? And that's what you need to do when you're going through a divorce legally. The problem is that when we get triggered emotionally, we can't make good decisions. So you might have had this experience if at any point during your divorce, you noticed your own reaction when you saw an email from your lawyer, right? Or any communication from your ex. A lot of men tell me that as soon as they see that in their email inbox or popping up on their phone, their heart rate goes up, their blood pressure goes up, they start to feel stressed, right? And so those things, that accelerated heart rate, maybe you feel anxiety or anger. Those are two big emotions that get triggered in this process. Those are all signs that your nervous system is moving into a state of fight or flight. And when we're in a fight or flight state, we lose access to certain parts of the brain. So I actually wanted to read you guys something here. There is a woman who studies the limbic system and workplace stress. Her name is Emmy Golding. She's the director of psychology at the Workplace Mental Health Institute. And she describes this really well. So I'm just going to share the way she talks about it. She says, the limbic system is the first part of the brain that develops in utero, and it's wired for survival. And for those of you who don't know, the limbic system is where our emotions originate. It's where the amygdala is, where our brain interprets whether or not we're in a threatening situation, and it's where that fight or flight response originates. So Golding goes on to say it's there to keep us alive. It doesn't care about well-being, and it's not wired for complex decision-making. If I'm in the jungle and I'm under stress, which basically means I'm under threat as something's about to attack me or eat me, our brain doesn't sit there and calculate all the pros and cons of a certain situation. It just goes, there's a tiger, so you need to run or freeze or grab something to fight it. And so Golding works with a lot of lawyers, interestingly, since we're talking about the legal mistakes people make during divorce. She says lawyers may like to think that they're more rational, sensible, and logical, but lawyers are human, and all brains work in the same way. When we're impacted by stress, the emotional system overrides the logic system in the brain. And so, you guys, this is so critically important to be aware of. When we're emotionally activated, when we're in fight or flight, it happens without us choosing it. It's an automatic response. And it impairs our ability to make good decisions or to think clearly. Right? So if you're feeling anxious or frustrated or angry, those are signs that your body's in fight or flight. And so, of course, this happens when you get an email from your lawyer or communication from your ex, because there's so much at stake here. Right? You are being threatened. Your financial future is at stake. Your time with your children is at stake. Potentially what you do with the rest of your life, where you live, when you can retire. So there are a lot of threats. But the problem is that our nervous system, that fight or flight response, is about immediate threat. It's there to help us run from a tiger or fight back against someone who's attacking us. The threats that you're facing are in the future, right? The court date that this email is about might not be for months, right? So this is not, you don't need your body there to help you make this immediate decision to run from a tiger. You need to be able to really sit down and think through a strategy that's going to give you the best possible outcome a month from now, 6 months from now, a year from now. And so this is where our nervous system, which evolved to protect us, actually can do us a great disservice. So, what I see playing out with a lot of men going through divorce is that they get really activated and then they do one of two things. These are the two kind of extreme ends of the spectrum, but it happens a lot. Either they give up way too much. They're like, take it, take all my money, take the time with the kids, take everything, just make this stop because I can't tolerate any more of this. I can't go to mediation. I can't handle these emails. Because if you've had this experience, right, especially if there's some contention in your divorce, those emails might destroy you for the whole day or the whole week. You might not be able to work. You might not be able to focus. So for some men, they end up just saying, take it, I don't care. And I've actually seen men give away far more than their wife was asking for, far more than would have been legally required of them, just to end that emotional stress of the divorce process. Maybe an extreme case was seeing a man who gave up so much that he went from living in a really beautiful home, a really beautiful life, to living out of his van for over a year and then couch surfing and struggling to find work. And I just spoke to a man the other day who went from making multiple six figures a year in his business to not being able to function in his business at all, shutting it down, taking a 60K a year job. Right? The intensity of that emotional stress is extreme. So sometimes men end up giving in the hopes that it will just stop that emotional pain. The problem is that it doesn't work. There's some immediate relief, right? The legal process is over. So you're not getting those emails or there's not all of those triggers happening all the time. But the source of the distress hasn't really gone away. You're still divorced. And now maybe you're without money and without time with your kids. And the painful thoughts, the inability to really understand what happened and why and how you got to be here, all of that's still there. So for a lot of men who go that route, who are like, I'm just going to give it to her and make it stop, they find is that there's a little relief, but then they don't start to feel better. And I see a lot of men who do this being stuck, often for years after the divorce. The other mistake is at the other end of the spectrum. So they get mad. And instead of a flee response, they get the fight response. And so those men tend to create bigger legal battles than are really necessary. And this is where divorce cases can get really nasty and really expensive because you're so activated and feeling so threatened and you're responding by like wanting to fight back and beat her down. And especially if you didn't choose this and she did it to you and you've lost agency and you don't feel like you're in control, that fight response can feel really good. It can be really empowering, but it can cause you to make choices, to fight over things that maybe don't need to be fought over. And the sad reality is that most divorce cases, I know this is not everyone, and some of you who are here with me today might be the exception to this. Most divorce cases end up in a relatively 50-50 split, whether it's done amicably or through mediation, or it goes all the way in front of a judge. And so when you are in that fight response and you pick a fight, well, it's very easy to end up in a situation where you're just paying lawyers to fight back and forth to get to the same outcome or a relatively similar outcome to what you would have had if you had done it amicably. And so in that case, the fight response can really screw you because you can end up spending more money and not necessarily ending up in a better position than you would have. So those are the two extreme mistakes I see men making when their nervous system is activated during the legal process. There's another one that's maybe less extreme, but it can really build up and get expensive as well. And that's just not being able to communicate at all with your ex and having to make everything go through the lawyers. And maybe you don't pick a big fight, but you pick little ones, right? You fight over who gets to keep certain sentimental objects in the house or over photographs. And it's amazing, right? But if you're paying your lawyer $300 or $400 an hour, a few emails back and forth arguing about family photos can cost you thousands of dollars. And so that's just a direct byproduct of your nervous system being activated because you're so charged when you see those emails that you can't calmly sit down and access the parts of your brain that would help you come up with a reasonable, a simple solution. Two more things that are important to know about your brain on a fight or flight response. One is that it narrows your vision, quite literally. When you're in fight or flight, we lose our peripheral vision so that we can focus really clearly on what's right in front of us. But it also has been shown that this impacts the way we think. So not only does our literal vision narrow, but our mental focus narrows, and everything is focused on the threat. I'm not worrying about, if I'm back in the jungle with Golding, I'm not worried about the monkeys in the trees or the creek behind me. Everything is focused on that tiger, right? Because that's where the danger is. And the same thing happens in our brain on fight or flight. Our vision gets really narrow, and we can no longer see the bigger picture. All we can see is the danger and the threat. And so from that place, it's really difficult for us to make grounded decisions, to see the whole scene, to really think about what are our ultimate goals. And this is the second piece of it, is fight or flight also changes our time perception. So when your nervous system is activated and you're having to deal with this like legal plan of action and deal with the lawyers and deal with the mediators and deal with the judge, you are trying to handle issues that have a massive impact on your future. But your brain's not thinking about the future. Your brain is in the present because fight or flight is now. And again, if I'm sitting there being faced by that tiger, I'm not thinking about my family back home. If I'm thinking about them or what we're going to do next week or next month, I'm probably going to get eaten. So in that moment, the brain is so focused in the present. And this is something that a lot of people struggle with again in the legal process is they need to be making really balanced decisions about their future, but their nervous system isn't letting them even see the future. It's just right now. What's hurting me now? I need to lash back out or get away. And then we end up either giving too much or causing fights or just dragging on the legal battle much further than it needs to go. So let's see, guys. We've got a note in the comments I want to just check in with. RJ says, still living with my ex-wife after a year since she asked for a divorce. Oof, that's hard, RJ. House is going up for sale soon. I see what you're saying about fight or flight. Alimony has put me in fight mode. Yeah, and RJ, you're still sharing a house with her too. It's been my experience. I've had a lot of clients go through that for different lengths of time. A year, it's a long time. Being in the same space with her isn't going to help. It's a hard balance to strike because there's so many things about her that are going to trigger that fight or flight response. And then you have the legal process as well. So RJ, we're going to shift right now and start talking about what you can actually do, what to focus on to help that nervous system. And this is going to be really important for you because your nervous system is getting activated in a couple of different directions, both from the legal process, but also just from sharing a space, a physical living space with her as you go through all of this. All right, so guys, maybe that's a good segue into what do we do? Right? If a lot of men make mistakes in the legal process because their nervous systems are in fight or flight, then we need to get the nervous system to calm down, to feel safe. Because that fight or flight response is pretty outdated for our modern world. It's great for in the moment life and death survival situations. Not so good for these more intricate, detailed, long-term issues like going through a divorce and dealing with the legal process. So we need to help the nervous system calm down, realize that right here, right now, in this moment, you're safe, and that you don't need this high level of activation. You don't need the cortisol. You don't need the adrenaline. There's no reason for your heart rate to be going up and sending more oxygen to your skeletal muscle because you're not running anywhere and you're not fighting back. Right? What we need to have happen is for your blood pressure to go down, your heart rate to go down, your whole body to take a deep breath, and you to start to be able to access that prefrontal cortex where executive functioning happens, right? Evaluation, judgment, analysis. Those are the parts of the brain we need. But we can't get to them until we calm the nervous system. So I'm going to give you on this call a couple of exercises for doing that. There's also, I'm going to share some other resources with you here. I made a video recently called The 9 Stages of Divorce for Men. And I'm just going to, so that I can share it with you in the chat. So this video goes into really great detail on 9 different emotional stages that I see most men going through during and after divorce. And it gives specific exercises that you can do at each stage. So I'm going to give you some more general things you can do now. That video is going to give you, like, if you're struggling with anger or depression or grief or denial, like whichever part of it you're in, there's things that you can do specifically. Okay, but the regulating the nervous system, there's a lot of ways in, but there's 2 that are really especially helpful. One is to activate the medial prefrontal cortex. It's this part of your brain, and it's the part of the conscious mind that's responsible for awareness. So if I ask you what your right hand feels like, you could focus on it and you'd notice how it feels, right? That is the medial prefrontal cortex. It's conscious, but it's not problem solving, it's not logic. And this part of the brain is really important because it has direct neural connections to the limbic system, which is where all of this nervous system fight or flight response is coming from. So we can activate that conscious awareness part of the brain and use it to calm the nervous system. And what it does is it helps the nervous system realize that you're safe here and now. Because if I have time to sit here and notice what my anxiety feels like, well, I'm not getting eaten by a lion, am I? Right? There isn't actually a tiger in front of me. And it helps the nervous system realize that right here, right now, you're safe. So there's a lot of different ways to activate that part of the brain. The simplest one is just to watch. Whatever you're feeling, notice how it feels. Just like you can feel your right hand and how it feels different from your left, notice your anxiety. How does it feel? Where is it? How big is it? What color is it? What shape is it? How does it move? Watch it without trying to solve it or change it. This exercise takes practice, and it usually takes a few tries before you start to notice a big result, because your brain's really conditioned to think that this is a threat. You need to react, fight or flight, go. So it's going to take a few times of really watching and noticing for your nervous system to start to feel more grounded and safe. The other easy way into the nervous system is through the breath. So most of what happens in our nervous system is totally beyond our control. Right? Your brain perceives a threat, heart rate goes up, blood pressure goes up, cortisol is flying, adrenaline is flowing. You didn't consciously choose any of that, and you can't consciously stop it. You can't be like, okay, cortisol levels go down. Okay, heart rate go down. Now, you actually maybe can. There's some really cool work with biofeedback, with heart rate variability. The Heart Math Institute does cool things with this. It seems you can train yourself to more directly influence these autonomic features, but most of us don't know how to do that. So the breath is our easy way in, because when you go into fight or flight, your breathing gets faster and more shallow. And so that I can control. I can say, okay, take a deeper breath. Right? And breathing exercises, I used to be so skeptical of them, you guys. I was like, this is bullshit. I'm dealing with something huge here. And think of the situation you're in, right? You're going through a divorce. Your financial future is at stake. Your time with your children is at stake. You've got this woman who's being emotional and unreasonable, and she's in fight or flight, and she's making these horrible demands, and you're up against a legal system that might be biased against you as a man, right? And I'm talking about breathing exercises. Like, I thought it was ridiculous too. But the fact is that our breath is part of that nervous system response. And that whole fight or flight response, everything that's happening in the body from the increased heart rate to the cortisol levels, they're all connected. And it's a feedback loop. So if I intentionally slow my breathing or start to control my breathing, the cortisol levels, the adrenaline, the heart rate, all of that is going to respond in turn. So the breath is a really cool way, a really simple way to slow to slow the fight or flight response and start to bring your nervous system back to a grounded state. There's a lot of breathing exercises. There's 3 that I like. The simplest one is just to increase the length of your exhale. That is directly tied to decreasing fight or flight responses. The other is, I just learned this one from a client. It's really good. It's the physiological sigh. You inhale, and then at the top, you suck in some breath, almost like you were crying, like a big, and then you exhale. And that last little sucking in of breath expands the alveoli in your lungs, which when you're in that short, shallow breathing have become flattened and compressed. So you don't have as much surface area for oxygen exchange. So that little puff of air, when you're already full of oxygen, expands the little sacs in your lungs, allows you to get more oxygen. And that is all going to start to decrease that fight or flight response. So guys, there's a lot of different ways to do this. But if you want to make better choices legally, if you want to avoid these mistakes of getting caught up in a nasty, bitter legal battle that's unnecessary and expensive, or giving in too much, Counterintuitive as it might seem, you have to focus on your nervous system because until your nervous system is calm and balanced, you are just not going to be able to access the parts of your brain that you need to make these good decisions. And as soon as it is balanced, you will naturally regain access to those parts of your brain. So the focus is balancing the nervous system. If you'd like more support with that, I did just open the doors to my 90-day accelerated coaching program. It starts December 1st. There's a limited number of spots, but we're really going to focus deeply on this work, getting the nervous system grounded and balanced so that your emotions are no longer running away with you, so that you can start to really walk away from feelings of shame, feelings of failure, so that you can show up at work, be a good dad, co-parent effectively, and start to take control of your life moving forward instead of having every thought and feeling be controlled by her. Right? Because right now, she probably has too much control over you. If you find yourself going into fight or flight every time you read one of her emails or get a text message from her, or if thoughts of her and maybe her and her new partner are just in your brain all of the time, right? She's got way too much sway over how you're thinking and feeling. So you can join me in this 90-day program. I'll drop a link, guys. I'm doing consultation calls for this through the month of November or until the spots fill up. There's only 12 for this program. So it just opened. Spots are open. So if you want to work directly with me on this, book a call and we'll talk about it, make sure it's a good fit for where you're at. The other place I would encourage you to go is to that 9 stages of divorce, the 9 emotional stages, to get some really concrete step-by-step exercises. All right, guys, there's a couple of notes in the comments that I want to look at. And as I'm reading through these, if there are any questions that you have for me, this is a great time for us to address them. So please drop any questions in the comments and we can talk about them. All right, let's see. I see Khalid, your videos are very helpful. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you for watching. Kevin also for a year. It's helpful to understand narcissism. Then I just took control of my emotions. Now I'm trying to figure out who I was really meant to be. I love that, Kevin. I took control of my emotions. This might be a difficult conversation to have here in the chat, but I am very curious what it was for you that allowed you to step back into the driver's seat of your emotions. And Kevin leads us to really the next stage, who I really was meant to be. That's what I see in all of this work with my clients. And this can make a big difference on the legal side too. Usually we have to start with the emotions and the nervous system because as we've seen, right, when those are out of control and driving the show, you really don't have a lot of clarity. You can't make sound choices. You just simply physiologically don't have access to the parts of your brain that you need. But when you do get those emotions under control and your nervous system balanced, the next thing that comes up is that sense of, well, who am I? Right? Who am I apart from this person? Who am I apart from this marriage? Who do I want to be going forward? And defining that identity can really start to influence how you show up in the legal conversations as well. What's that future man that you're becoming, that person you want to be now? How does he respond? How does he react? The person who's no longer tied to her or in a codependent relationship with her, the person that she doesn't have this emotional power over, how does he show up? How does future me handle this? And that can be a really great grounding guide. It's also another good tool for the nervous system because when we imagine that future self, well, we're imagining a future, which means we plan to live to the future, which means we're safer now. And often the brain will allow us to go there and really envision who we want to be, where we want to be. And that can give us more breathing room in the nervous system, which then gives us more access to those parts of the brain that help us out the most. All right, guys, I've got to close here and hop onto another call. Thank you so much for joining me. I apologize again about the poor video quality and the tech problems I'm having today. Please do check out the 9 stages of divorce. And if you'd like to go deeper into this work with me, book a discovery call and let's talk about my new program, Better Beyond Divorce Intensive, see if it's a good fit. Kevin, awesome. So glad that you joined us today. I really appreciate you being here. You too, RJ. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Hi, Peter. Yeah, I'm sorry. I had a bunch of tech problems here, so I'm glad that you were able to find us. Thank you as well, Chris. Okay, guys, have a good day. I'm gonna do a couple of YouTube lives this week, and I'm gonna get the webcam figured out so they'll be better. And I will be posting the link on my YouTube channel there in the membership, also in the Better Beyond Divorce community. So hopefully I'll see you guys on some more lives. All right, bye-bye.